This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
The law of attraction states that everything is energy and that like attracts like. True spirituality states that the only true reality is that of oneness, unity, and unconditional love and forgiveness. Together, these two are attached at the hip and perform a beautiful symbiotic dance together. Hi, I'm Carl Gruber, author of the brand new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship. This is a book that will show you how to build a rock-solid personal foundation based on unchanging, eternal, universal truth that shows you how to become a consistent co-creator with the universe to create the life you love to live and live to love. Get your copy today of my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship, and learn how to manifest the life you truly desire to be living. Now available as an ebook or paperback on Amazon. Welcome to the show that explores all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening. This is World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment. I am your host, Carl Gruber. Now, I'm a certified law of attraction life coach, and in 2018, after a 20-plus year career in radio as a DJ, I combined my microphone experience with my curiosity about and wanting to understand all that lies beyond our visible 3D world of limitations, lack, and attack. So I started this show. Now, 175 episodes later, here we are bringing you yet another one-on-one, in-depth conversation with one of the world's top experts in these areas of spirituality, metaphysics, and enlightenment. As Captain Kirk said on the old sci-fi TV show Star Trek, when he stated to go boldly where no man has gone before. That's us. So with this in mind, let me introduce our guest for this show. And I'm so happy to welcome back for his second visit to the show, Dean Graves, for yet another fascinating discussion on the topic of consciousness. Now you'll hear the real truth about consciousness as explained by Dean. And he is a multi-talented personality who has been sharing his knowledge on meditation and mindfulness for more than 2 decades. Now, he's written a number of books, including Enlightenment Plain and Simple, The Identity Model, Edifying Children of a Lesser God, and now his newest book that just came out in the last month, The Enigma of Consciousness, in which he takes one of the deepest and most profound looks at the origins of and the explanation of what consciousness really is. And I would have to add that even though I've only just scratched the surface of reading this book, I can say it is perhaps one of the most definitive and complete treatises I have ever read on the subject of consciousness. And on that, Dean, welcome back to World Awakenings.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate you having me. Delighted to be here.
Well, of course, we were happy to have you come back because with the release of your new book, I think I mentioned about me just scratching the surface of your new book, but I mean, when you were on the show about 5 months ago, it's such a huge, gargantuan subject. I mean, we really only scratched the surface in a 1-hour conversation, but I would like to find out, well, first, I mean, honestly, I have to say congratulations on publishing this book.
Thank you.
The name is The Enigma of Consciousness, a spiritual exploration of humanity's relationship to creation. So Among other things that you have done during your life, you're known as a mental health counselor and a spiritual guide. What drew you to study and write about this huge subject of consciousness?
Um, well, I was directed to that. I was presented with the opportunity. Really, uh, my interest was piqued with the concept of consciousness when I was roughly 50 years old, and I was introduced to the raw material that was a series of channelings that the LL Research people out of Louisville, Kentucky, conducted in the early 80s. And they compiled four, really five books that was uh, a transcription of their communication with a sixth density being by the name of Ra. And that is the same Ra that was noted in Egyptian history, but nothing like the context that Egyptians interpreted the experience. And the communications just resonated. And when I say resonated, when we read or hear something, we feel how it resonates with us, and that's how we determine truth, whether it resonates with our prevailing condition of being. And that was instrumental in my beginning. I, with my spouse at the time, began a course of self-healing and investigation, and she died in 2011. And that began really her death in 2011 began a very intense period of investigation and study with my own communication with the same entity that communicated to the LL Research people. And they were teaching me. And I continue that relationship today on a daily basis. And that is the source of my information. And it is purposeful in that I consider myself to be simply a messenger to transcribe the information and present it to the world as guidance for the world's population's understanding and self-healing, and with the hopes of propelling them down the evolutionary path, which is synonymous with the Enlightenment path. And so that was my beginning. That's been my primary activity. And we transitioned from simply the learning standpoint to the active part of providing the information to the populace. And also part of the plan, my current significant other, she initially was a student of mine. I conducted courses and classes and things of that nature. And we developed a relationship, and she is an Arcturian wanderer, and we communicate regularly with the Arcturians. And all of this is explained in the book, who the Arcturians are and what a wanderer is and all of that. But that is her mission as well, to provide the same information from the viewpoint of the Arcturians, which is not different. There are some nuances to their understanding of the subject matter that's presented, but it's a reiteration and another resource to provide the same information to the populace.
Well, that's interesting. I know that the first time you were on the show a few months ago, we did touch on the fact that you had mentioned Ra, and unfortunately, on my part, I did not really research that. But so you actually communicate with Ra, but you're not a channel where they speak through you. You're actually just communicating with them, and you hear them and understand them.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable being a vocal channel. I'm not a good vocal channel. I have channeled vocally before, but it's not something that I feel comfortable with. And so the effort on Ra's part has been to educate me so I can present the matter or the information in a format that is more acceptable to the range of consciousness that we all share. I am an analog projection, as we all are, an analog projection of my metaphysical self. And so my perspectives have changed dramatically over the years, but that notwithstanding, my ability to understand the nature of the listener to the information and how they're receiving it or not receiving it or so forth is on their same level. Ra is way beyond where we are in the evolutionary process. For the most part, they are one of the primary originators, creators of the entire Earth experience. And so consequently, their communication and the raw material is very, it comes across as very staid, very, from our perspective, very intellectual, and it's difficult for most people to read and to understand. And it's not as cohesively presented as the information that I put into this book, primarily because there was a trio of folks that comprised the LL Research folks, and Carla Ruckert was the channel. Don was the inquisitor, and they're both deceased at this point. Jim is the scribe, is he's called, and the information is presented as Don thought of the questions. In other words, to receive this information, you have to ask the question, because that tells the higher beings that you're ready to receive the information. If you can formulate the question, you have enough understanding to pose the question, then that's the signal to them that they can provide you with the information. If you don't know enough to ask the question, then they're not going to sit you down and say, this is what you need to know, this is what you need to learn. And so consequently, the inquisitor leads the class by asking questions. And what differs from what I've presented in this book and what was presented in the raw material is, of course, I had the raw material to use as a resource. And so I had that basic understanding. And so this book is a furtherization of that information. And in most of the topics, I was able to go deeper than what was presented in the raw material, simply because I had that foundation and posed the questions.
Wow, you've given me a homework assignment. I'm going to have to go study the raw material. So that's for another show. But let's go back to your new book, The Enigma of Consciousness, and it seems like a culmination of a lifetime of study by you, and it has a subtitle of A Spiritual Exploration of Humanity's Relationship to Creation. So how do spirituality and consciousness intersect?
Well, spirituality is essentially the part of our experience that is intangible. And because it's intangible, I'm going to throw out some philosophy terms here. Immanuel Kant, who's considered to be the father of modern philosophy, conceptualized a priori and a posteriori information. A posteriori knowledge is things that we can see, feel, touch, we can substantiate by virtue of the senses. A priori information are things that we can't substantiate by our senses, but nevertheless we can believe them and understand them. Religion, one of the most valuable contributions that religion has made to the population is the ability to believe in the non-physical. But because of the nature of our experience, we exist within a range of consciousness, and that range of consciousness is dependent upon our perception of the authenticity of the physical world around us. But in order to advance along the enlightenment path, it's necessary that we transcend that or begin to transcend that. And that will be the process that we continue to undertake in both this range of consciousness, which we have to graduate from, just like you graduate from third grade to go to fourth grade. And we graduate to fourth grade, fourth density, which will pick up where third density leaves off, still very much dependent upon the authenticity of the physical. But in order to graduate from fourth density, we have to surrender that. And so all that we perceive to be real becomes not real, but not important. And so by the end of fourth density, we no longer will need a physical body. And we will still exist, but we will exist as our metaphysical self, which is actually a consciousness pattern. But we currently have a metaphysical self as well as what we perceive to be our physical self. The metaphysical self is a consciousness pattern that we have been formulating through what we perceive to be time, with repeated incarnations into the physical world. And we do that because the physical world is so much more intense, excuse me, than the metaphysical world experience. And that consciousness pattern is our enduring self. It is eternal. It is what is actually the aspect of us that is following the enlightenment path, or the spiritual path, if you prefer. And that is our cumulative, the accumulation of all of our beliefs and experiences. It still is a mind, body, spirit, but the body is the consciousness pattern itself rather than a physical body as we encounter it. Well, right now, as a matter of fact.
Well, that's really interesting. I was going to ask if we move from the third density to the fourth density, do we still get to keep our body? But you answered that. Once we move on to the fourth density, or the fourth level of reality, whatever you want to call it. So there, or as you call it, the analog body, or the world of form, is no longer necessary, right?
That's correct. Yeah, but we're still on the evolutionary path. It's still a process of surrendering our distortions of perception, further exploring the self in relation to the environment around us. And that is the entirety of the process of evolution and the enlightenment path as we progress along that path.
I've had a number of people on the show, my guests, who have spoken about humanity is on the cusp of moving to a higher level, to the 4D, the 5D. And it really is interesting. They've even said that certain members of the population of humanity are already kind of blipping off into those densities, but not in mass. But maybe for the first time, this has been happening in humanity as the awareness and awakening comes to them.
Well, the densities are often abbreviated to 3D, 4D, and 5D, but 5D is way down the line. fifth density is way down the line. You have to go through fourth density first. Each of the first density and second density are considered to be foundational densities. They're still consciousness. First density, greatly or easily summarized, is inorganic matter, which includes atmosphere, fire, and water. Second density are plants and animals, organic matter, but not humanity per se. Humanity is third density. The majority of the children that have been born since the middle 2000s are actually fourth density children. They have graduated from third density and are beginning a fourth density experience. And the uniqueness that Earth is currently experiencing, third density has a defined period of time. And that defined period of time is approximately 75,000 years. And the third density experience that has existed in our recollection for 75,000 years ended in February of 2016. And we immediately began a new third density experience, but simultaneously we began a fourth density experience. And the planet itself, Gaia, is often referred to, is a fourth density consciousness. And it is holding the energy for the new third density experience as well as the fourth density experience. But the third density experience is draining her energy capabilities. So we are experiencing, and we are in process for it right now, a splitting of not of the planet Earth itself, but of the population. And those individuals that have graduated, in order to graduate, you have to die, you go through an assessment period. And if your assessment period is equivalent to the beginning fourth density levels, then you'll go on to the fourth density experience. If not, you'll just continue on in your third density experiences. But people aren't blipping off of the planet because they're going to fourth density. It doesn't work like that. When you finish a third density experience, Ra explained it as you walk the steps of light, and light is information. And as you walk the steps of light, where the light becomes too bright is like the Peter principle, that's one step too far. And so you go back to the level that you feel comfortable with. And that is where your learning has taken you, and you begin to incarnate again to learn additional lessons in order and fulfill the curriculum to move farther down the line. But those that walk the steps of light and measure of a fourth density level graduate to fourth density. And the course of their study is initially appears to be very similar to third density. That's why the fourth density children can coexist right now in an environment with third density, but their awareness, which is strategic, is greatly higher than the third density population, and their progression will be dramatically more fast than the third density will be. So that is in process right now. It'll take several generations for that to happen. The fourth density children are in what are called transitional bodies. The third density body is entirely chemical. The fourth density body is entirely electric. And so right now, they're mostly chemical, but somewhat electric. As they have children, then that will further that transition to become more and more electric until they're all electric bodies. And they will still continue to incarnate for a period of time into those electric bodies, but they no longer will interact with the third density, even though we share the same planet. The planet itself will have two different vibrational levels. And so consequently, the fourth density will be shielded from third density detection until they learn to shield themselves. And once they learn to shield themselves, then they will principally become guides to the third density, but they won't interact on a day-to-day basis as we perceive them now.
Well, everything that you just spoke about, doing what I do, hosting this show and having amazing experts and teachers, I've had ascended masters on here. It kind of all comes together with what all these other people and entities have said to me here on this show. It makes sense, but some astounding information and knowledge. Thank you for that, Dean. But let's go back to your book, your brand new book, the chapter, The Enigma of Consciousness. In chapter 1 of your book, you state that creation's purpose is to provide a mechanism that allows the one infinite creator to know itself by experiencing itself. I have to say, when I first read that a couple days ago, I kind of had a, okay, let me think about this. So if you maybe want to talk about that a little bit, that's quite a statement.
Sure. Well, that was the intended purpose of creation before creation began. And in order to, in the wisdom of the one infinite creator, determined that in order to know itself, it needed to experience itself. But if you're all that there is, it's very difficult to experience yourself. And so the beginning of creation and synonymous with the beginning of consciousness. The one infinite creator projected a concept, which is the concept of awareness. And in the book, I state that the one infinite creator projected two concepts, primarily because that's going to be, I think that's going to be easier for the populace to understand that infinity is a concept. Actually, the creator is itself infinite because it's all that it is. The numerical value of infinity is 1, and that's called the law of one. That's the one absolute truth in all that we experience, that everything is one. Everything is the one infinite creator. So the one infinite creator projected the concept of awareness into itself. In other words, it became aware, and that created an environment. And that environment is identified as intelligent infinity. And within that environment of intelligent infinity, the creator projected an analog projection of itself, which was entirely conceptual. But that notwithstanding, it was just as you and I perceive ourselves as real. The projection of the creator perceived itself as real, but it differed only in the fact that it was intoxicated with free will. Now, philosophers have debated forever about whether we have free will or we don't have free will, or we're predetermined or whatever. That consideration is a result of free will. Free will is the concept of separation. And so the analog projection of the one infinite creator was intoxicated with free will and perceived itself as separate from the one infinite creator. It was a distortion. Free will was the first distortion that made creation possible. And that created the first subject-object relationship, the one infinite creator being the creator is the object, and the analog projection of the one infinite creator being the creator as the subject. So the analog projection, the creator as the subject, had the same ambitions as the creator, one infinite creator. And so it began to develop creation by duplicating that action, that activity, and within itself projecting additional free will, which acts as an intoxicant. the more intoxicated you are with free will, just like more whiskey that you drink, the lower your awareness becomes. And so consequently, the seventh density, which is the first layer below the eighth density, which is the creator as the subject, was more intoxicated, and that became stratified into an infinite number of dimensions. If you understand that a density, say a density is a mile, a dimension is an inch within that mile. And so seventh density is stratified into an infinite number of dimensions. Each succeeding layer is a fractal of the layer above, but it is more intense and more intensely intoxicated with free will than the layer above. That created the seventh density, a range of consciousness. Within that range of 5 inherent characteristics of the creator became delineated. And the creator knew that these existed before, but they were not delineated. And those 5 inherent characteristics, very simply, are awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. Sixth density was a further projection by adding additional free will intoxication. It is a very broad range of consciousness. It is twice as wide as any other density. And within that sixth density, about midway down the lower half of sixth density, were created additional distortions. And my understanding is that there are a total of 26 distortions other than the 5 inherent characteristics and free will. All 32 of these distortions, inherent characteristics, and free will are archetypes of the creator. And everything below sixth density is created from a mixing and matching of a combination of the inherent characteristics and the distortions. The creation, a universe, is created by the mixing and matching of these archetypes of the creator. The particular universe that we experience, as do the Palladians, as do the Arcturians, who are simply different systems, are comprised of 9 archetypes. The 5 inherent characteristics, free will, along with the distortion of motion, movement, and enhanced distortion of perception of separation. So we have not only free will, but we have this additional distortion of an enhanced perception of separation, and unconsciousness. And each of the archetypes has a name, has an identifier, and the fifth, fourth, third, second, and first are all comprised of these 9 archetypes of the creator. Every star that is in this universe is home to one of the archetypes of the creator. And so because we're a 9-star system, our universe has expanded in 9-star groupings at a time. And if you think of the 9 stars as an organism that functions as an organism and of its own free will determination, explores itself by having experiences. And so we are part of a 9-star system. The Arcturians are simply a sister 9-star system that's been in the process longer than we have. Pleiadians are just another 9-star system that have been in the system longer than we have. And in the book, I delineate what our 9 stars are, and which archetype is associated with which stars. Relatively speaking, our stars are considered to be close together compared to some of them. But we perceive, as a result of our low awareness, we perceive there to be distance, that there is a long distance between stars. The reality is there's no distance whatsoever. It's purely perception. So the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, the Ra group, our 9-star system, are right here. There's no distance other than vibrational level and perception.
Wow, so there's a heck of a lot of incredible information that you just gave us there, a lot to chew on, and I just want to hold up Dean's book, the brand new book, The Enigma of Consciousness. I think I've got half of the first 50 pages underlined. And it's a long book, but I mean it's an incredible read. So I advise anybody watching or listening to grab a copy of this book because it's an incredible treatise on all of this. I am going to go back here, Dean. You say that the Creator provided this mechanism to allow it to know itself. But if the Creator is described as all that is, and there's no other way to say all that is all that there is, if all that is that, wouldn't he already have known himself? Because that's part of all that is. Why would he need to create an experience? I mean, all that is.
Well, every time that we have an experience, we are interpreting, we're obligated to interpret that experience according to how we are at the time. And we are a mind, body, spirit, and we perceive, because of our low level of consciousness, that we have an individualized spirit. That's not true. Our spirit is the spirit of the one infinite creator. It is our limited capacity to grasp that and to experience that compels us to perceive that we have an individualized spirit. As we progress through the consciousness path, or along the consciousness path, we will begin to surrender that perception and realize that we are more and more the one infinite creator until eventually we reintegrate with the one infinite creator with all of the learning that we have gained by perceiving ourselves as separate. We are also a mind, and this is a very not controversial. It's just not something that is apparently ever asked in psychology or philosophy as to what is a mind. They study behavior, but they don't really understand what a mind is. A mind is nothing more than a bundle of beliefs. That's all a mind is. It is a filter that determines how we are, that provides that unique exploration and experience to the spirit. Our spirit is the actual experiencer of everything that we do, say, think, whatever, which is the one infinite creator experiencing us at this range of consciousness. The body is something that's given to us that allows us to have certain types of experiences. You and I both have a white male body, but we have incarnated as every possibility within the third density range of experience. We have been black, brown, white, red, yellow, whatever color, male, female. We've experienced all of that by this point. The average human has experienced over 3,000 lifetimes, and some as many as 8,000 lifetimes. And the purpose of that is to allow us to have experiences from which we can explore ourselves from that perspective, from that vantage point. We've been rich, we've been poor, we've been middle class, we've been whatever. And it has not been a linear journey. We miss an incarnation in what we perceive to be the future that would provide us with the type of learning that we need. I think my internet just blinked for a moment. If that lifetime provided us with the curriculum that we needed to learn to further our progression, then we would incarnate in the future. If there was in lifetime in the past, what we perceive to be the past, that would provide us with that information, then we would incarnate in that.
Well, I'd like to talk to more to the topic of free will. This gift of free will that you say is synonymous with the feeling and the thought of separation from Creator. Now, you know very well that I am a big student of A Course in Miracles, which is
Hmm.
one of the modern spiritual guide of non-dualistic spirituality. In that, it says that the Creator or God created us as His Son, and that He is the Father and we are the Son, but we are one with Him, and that the Son fell asleep into what they call a tiny mad idea of separation. So I don't know if that exactly agrees with everything you say, but it does kind of fall in line with what how you're explaining this, that we are in a dream of separation, and that dream of separation is that we were incorporated with free will, which, yeah, you're the first person I ever heard say that free will is an intoxicant like whiskey, which actually is a pretty good analogy.
Hmm. It is. Yeah. But in the law of one, the one truth of all of creation is that all is one. And using those phrases like father and son and so forth kind of puts it into a perspective that the general population can understand, because we think in limited biological and time constraint forms, but those are just our perceptions.
Yeah, yeah. So we have talked about enlightenment. I mean, what exactly is your definition of enlightenment? I guess you kind of actually have already answered that, but enlightenment really is a primary goal of every true spiritual seeker, I would think.
It is, and the nature of our experience, what we are striving to do by having these experiences that we do during an incarnation and in between, is to sober from our free will intoxication. Fourth density is simply more sober than we are as third density. We have our core being does not change. We already are what we seek. We are the inherent characteristics of the creator. We are the creator itself. But because of this free will intoxication, we don't recognize that. We create a mind, and mind is a bundle of beliefs which is unique to the nature of our prevailing experience. And we interpret our experiences accordingly, which diversifies the cumulative experiences that we have as a consciousness pattern, and consequently that the creator experiences through our participation in creation.
Yeah. Oh, well, again, a lot to chew on, but excellent. I thank you for that. Also, another thing I read in your book, and you, again, you've kind of touched on this quite a bit, but you state that there's 8 ranges of or levels of consciousness. Can you break down each of those stages and tell us what they are and how do we get there?
Well, we get there by doing what we're doing, by having experiences and learning and surrendering our perceptions of separation. The eighth density is the creator is the subject. Seventh density, the eighth, seventh, and sixth densities are characterized as creator being densities. The fifth, fourth, and third are characterized as experiential densities, and 2 and 1 are the foundational densities. The foundational densities are just as much consciousness as we are, or eighth density is, but they are heavily intoxicated with perception of separation. And if you imagine that all of creation exists, essentially the creator is sending itself as far away from itself as it can, and then guiding and allowing it to evolve back to unity with the creator. And so it is exploring itself at all possible dimensions along that path. The enlightenment path is nothing more than the process of surrendering our perception of separation and moving directionally upward. We perceive it to be upward through that reverse path, whether we were sent as far away from the Creator as we can be. We're just progressing back to the Creator along that path. And so in order to do that, in our range of consciousness, it is essentially that we overcome the distortion of unconsciousness, which is part of our experience, which needs to be, that's a fundamental foundational step. We overcome unconsciousness and we quit relying on other people to do the work for us and to save us. We are the one infinite creator, so we have no need to be saved. We need good information and guidance, but we don't need to be saved. And at that point, it is incumbent upon us to take responsibility for our self-progression along that path and to become aware. This range of consciousness each from 7 to 3 coincides with the 5 inherent characteristics, and they are hierarchical only because you have to build the floor before you build the walls. You have to build the wall before you build the roof, and so forth. It is necessary that we become awareness before we can begin to explore love, which is the inherent characteristic that is the task of fourth density. So our task in this range of consciousness is to overcome unconsciousness, to become aware. And as we progress through the dimensions of the density, we are tasked with becoming awareness. Now, another strategic decision that we have to make once we become aware, not awareness, but become aware, is to make a choice. And it's called the choice. And there's a whole chapter in the book on the choice. But the choice is whether we are going to polarize service to self or service to others. Those polarizing service to self are choosing to continue and further separate themselves from the Creator. Those choosing service to others are choosing the path of unity and reunification with the Creator. The service to others path is considered the direct path back to the Creator. The service to self path is considered the indirect path, because you will go so far and you can progress through the densities for literally billions of years, what we perceive to be billions of years. And you get to a point where you literally hit a brick wall. You can't go any farther than that. When you reach that point and make the decision to surrender this hierophant that you've created, this perception of separation, you got to go back and start all over again and follow the service to others path. And so all that we perceive to be demons and devils and all of those things that religion characterizes as evil are nothing more than those entities, those beings that have chosen the service to self path and are preying upon the service or the undecided, primarily third density beings throughout creation. Because when you choose to go service to self, you're choosing to alienate yourself from your higher self. You maintain the same higher self, but you decide not to align with the higher self. And in order to continue to participate in the lower ranges of consciousness, we are fueled every second of every day with what's called intelligent infinity. Intelligent infinity is energy, is what makes us be able to stay in creation. And if you alienate yourself from the source of that intelligent infinity, you still have to have intelligent infinity, so you have to get it from another source. Well, the other source, as it turns out, is third density that is still unconscious, that hasn't awakened yet, hasn't assumed responsibility for their own self, because we're a whole lot like Goldilocks' porridge. We have enough energy to make it worth their while to steal it from us, but we're not smart enough to know we're not supposed supposed to give it away. And so they have had service to self, particularly in the earth experiences, had tremendous input into the culture, into the hegemonies that dominate the world, into religions, you name it. They've been pervasive. And our most recent channeling from the Arcturians, they explain more in more detail how the higher ranges of service to self consciousness exist, how they participate, and they review a number of the major things that they've created in order to keep the third density population of Earth suppressed. In order to steal this energy, they rely upon domination and subjugation. And so we as a populace have been dominated and subjugated since way before the beginning of the Earth experience.
So everything that you talk about, if I've had 3,000 lives and I've been a slave and I've been a king, I've been a woman, I've been a man, I've been rich, I've been poor. And many times, especially when I hit a blip in my journey in my life, or anybody for that matter, there you go. Sometimes I just think, all right, enough. Can't I just come back home, Creator? Can't we just, why do I have to go through this whole rigmarole and go back? But obviously, that's not how it works. But I want to go back to, because you mentioned channeling your friend Aaron, who has been on the show, channeled the Arcturians. They talk about the bifurcation of humanity right now, and I think this is real obvious in the United States. There's a huge bifurcation or split of I'm going to this side, you're going to that side right now, especially during the upcoming 2024 presidential election. And that's really, really obvious. So is this bifurcation, is it for certain? Can we deviate and join, have the vast majority of people say, well, I'm going to be service for others, not service for self? I mean, we have free will to choose that, don't we? But
it's our choice. Absolutely. We can make it go any way we want to go. One path is given no preference over the other path, because both are exploring themselves from different vantage points, from different perspectives. The service to self is still exploring itself, but it's exploring what the service to others would consider to be the negative path. But it's the reverse side of the same coin. But it's still the Creator, all is one. So it's still the Creator exploring itself from that vantage point. Now, we, those choosing polarizing service to others, would look at that and say, well, that's wrong, that's stupid, that's evil, that's bad, that's whatever, adverb you want to add to that. But to those people, those individuals polarizing service to self, they are enhancing their false perception of self, and they will continue to do that and the primary reason they do that is fear, because this hierophant that we are obligated to create, which is explained in the archetypical mind chapters of the book, we are obligated to create this hierophant, this false perception of self. And that's what's talking right now. That is a mind that we create with every incarnation. That's who they perceive. We all perceive who we are. And if we're not who we think we are, then who the hell are we? And that's scary, because you don't get to see our authentic self until you begin to surrender that hierophant, that false perception of self. And so those that are choosing the service to self path are simply enhancing that false perception of self, and they will continue to enhance that. But the effect is that their vision becomes more and more myopic. And so as they progress through the creation process, they have to dominate and subjugate everyone around them. So everybody, because there are no friends, everybody becomes a competitor. and it's the one that is the most domineering and the most able to subject those around them, gets the most energy. It works kind of like a Tupperware pyramid. The guy at the top, he doesn't get a lot, but he gets a little bit from everybody. And so he's got more than anybody. And he's got a lot of minions out there running around collecting all of this energy and selling Tupperware door to door so that he can get his wealth, in the increments that result to the peak of the pyramid. And so that is the decision that we have to make in this range of consciousness. And until we overcome that unconsciousness condition, the service to self is going to remain unconscious, but they're going to enhance that. The bulk of the Earth population is still what I described as simply being in chaos. They're still unconscious. They're still subject to the domination and subjugation unawareedly of the service to self. And so they remain in chaos. They haven't assumed responsibility for who they are and begun to actually explore themselves yet. And we have the events of the last at least 50 years, probably the last 100 years, have been made available to intensify that separation. And that separation is reaching a peak now with the introduction of the fourth density children that is even intensifying that even more. That will simply, the populations will simply split. They'll simply divide. And whether we choose to go with the third density or the fourth density is entirely up to us. But it does require us to fulfill the curriculum requirements of going to fourth density.
Well, I will say that being alive at this time in human history is pretty interesting. And
You wanted to be here.
Yeah.
You bought a ticket early.
Right, absolutely. We chose to be here in this body at this time, but it is interesting to see how things are going, and it is encouraging to know that eventually we'll get back home, and it's quite a journey. But we're going to wind up here. We've been talking to amazing man. Dean Graves, who is the author of this astounding new book, The Enigma of Consciousness. I'm going to be studying this book for quite a long time, and I'm going to go back and probably listen to this show about 87 times so I can remember everything, because there's so much phenomenal information here. One last thing I would like to ask, Dean, if someone reads your new book, The Enigma of Consciousness, and grasps the concepts and application of the proper use of their consciousness, how will it enhance their life and the lives of those around them?
Well, understand that we experience stress, and stress is actually our teacher. The more that we enhance our hierophant, our false identity, and continue to separate ourselves from the Creator, the more stress we experience. Happiness is nothing more, bliss is the absence of stress. And so as we heal ourselves of this distortion of separation, as we surrender our free will intoxication, we reduce the amount of stress that we experience in our everyday life, and happiness automatically fills the void that is left by reducing the stress. And so our motivation to do this is to get happier and to assume responsibility for ourselves, surrender these false beliefs, these false perceptions of self. That reduces our stress, and as I said, happiness automatically fills that void and we get happier. And that's our measure of how we are doing, is if we're getting happier.
Yeah. Well, this is beautiful information. Dean, I so appreciate you coming back on the show again. I hope I wasn't too ignorant on things here, but it was an amazing conversation. Dean's new book, The Enigma of Consciousness, is, I believe, on O Books. Is that the publisher?
Creative Inc. and O Book is one of their imprints, they call it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's available from your local favorite bookstore or on Amazon. Of course, Amazon is so huge; it has every book ever
Yeah.
imprinted. Yeah.
Well, then, if if you're cool and you know the author, you might get a book sent to you.
That's true. Absolutely.
Which was a big help. So,
Yeah.
what's the last thing? If somebody wants to find out more about you and connect with you, what's your website or the best way they can connect to you?
I have a website. It's the initial Dean, Dean, Graves, Graves, all one word, .org, O-R-G. And it has my contact information, more information about me. And my mission in life is to provide this information as broadly and completely as I can. So, if the book doesn't satisfy your curiosity, then, I'm available for presentations, keynote speeches, whatever groups, whatever is necessary in order to spread the word.
And that you are doing and doing it well, spreading the word about this. One last thing, I know you have an audio show that you do called Chatting with the Arcturians, in which you are the inquisitor with the Arcturians coming through your friend Aaron Gordon. Where can people access that?
It's available on Spotify and most major podcast hosts. So you can go to wherever you get your podcasts and search that, and it should pop up. And we're constantly adding new episodes to it as we chat with the Arcturians, and they're able to provide us with some updates on how the process is going with the bifurcation of the Earth and so forth. So it's obviously more current information than what we can put into a book, because by the time you write it and print it, it's already stayed. So the book provides you with foundational information to understand what the Arcturians are talking about.
Just phenomenal stuff. So again, Dean Graves, thank you for being on World Awakenings. What an enlightening conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Carl. I enjoyed it very much.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.